Okay.
Why does your monitor look so nice? What is it called?
Turn your brightness up.
Oh, it just got an angle.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. Sorry we're running a little late. We've been doing budget all day. So what we're going to try and do here today is Eric Nelson, the county attorney, is going to give us an update on anything he's found in his review, what he hasn't found in his review, and where that kind of puts the county. My understanding is Mr. Ford is here. I think we'll let him go second after we quiz the county attorney, and you can give us some idea. Then we'll see where that leads us. If we get to some public comment or some interaction, we'll try and stay on task. This isn't about whether it should or shouldn't be or all that. We're trying to come to a resolution that works for all parties, because if we continue this standoff, nobody wins. Mr. Chrisman doesn't win, the user groups don't win. If one side gets everything they want, the other side's not going to. So we're going to try and at least set a path to get a resolution. I'm not going to suggest that we're going to get one today, because I think that's going to take some manipulation, some documents, maybe some legal things, some manipulations. But anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Eric Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So we're here today to discuss the Bridle Trail as it goes through Howard Chrisman's property. This is not an issue that's come up for the first time. In my review again of this file, I went back to 2012 when my predecessor, Bill Knight, was county attorney and began reviewing documents that he had compiled. And as part of our due diligence, we did contact a title company and ask for title work on the parcels in question. And of course, I received those documents about 10:45 this morning, so it took about 3.5, 4 weeks for them to get that together. And so there's still, I think, a lot of factual kind of background work that needs to be done. Unfortunately, the record keeping in the county over the years it hasn't been the greatest. It's something that we're working on as a staff, going back and trying to digitize records so that when we have these types of issues come up in the future, it's easier to ascertain what actually happened. But I think I can say relatively confidently, and we'll confirm this with the title review, that there is not an express easement that was recorded on the property in question. It doesn't look like that my predecessor, Mr. Knight, could find one. I think that the representations made by interested parties would also seem to indicate that. I was able to find a copy of a purported easement that was executed by the Kerrs back in, I think, 1939. That the intent from the document appears to be to establish a 100-foot wide easement across the property for use as a bridle trail. Doesn't appear that was ever properly acknowledged, nor was it certainly recorded. So I'm continuing to kind of sift through a lot of that background information. I think there's a lot of unknowns. There's been a lot of years that have passed since the establishment of the original bridle trail in the 1930s, and I continue to work with the county commissioners to then say what does all of that mean in terms of from a legal standpoint. So we'll continue to do our due diligence, and then based on the direction from the commission, I'll reach out to Mr. Ford and Mr. Chrisman, and we'll work on trying to find a resolution. So Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to go into any more detail, but that's a very high-level overview of kind of where we're at this point, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission might have.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Nelson? Being this is a work session, we're going to go by first names, Eric. So any questions for Eric? All right, there being none, Mr. Ford, if you'd like, tell us where you see things. on behalf of your, Mr. Chrisman.
Just very briefly, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ryan Ford with Williams Porter Danville here in town. Thank you for the opportunity to come and be part of this work session. I've been involved in this project for about 10 days at this point in time. So I feel like I've got some fresh blood, and I can see the frustration, and I can hear the disappointment in everybody's voice when we talk about these issues. This afternoon, when I relayed to Mr. Chrisman that there may be resolution to this, you could tell the relief in his voice immediately. I think that the county is very fortunate to have Mr. Chrisman be the owner of this property. I think that he is very interested in not only being able to maintain his private property rights, but at the end of the day, he is happy to have people come across his property as we can work out with Mr. Nelson. Mr. Chrisman is willing to give an easement on that southeast corner of the property there in that zigzag. He's also willing to give the public a revocable license across Davis Way to make crossing there easier. We'll work out some details with Mr. Nelson. We'll get those documents in place, and we believe that the trail can be back, the public can use it, and everybody can be on their happy way. So thank you very much for this opportunity. If you have any questions of us or of Mr. Chrisman, we're happy to address those.
Peter.
Mr. Ford, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I don't know if you're prepared to answer the question today. There was discussion years ago, before I was on the commission, of an acquisition of the Chrisman property. At some point, I think it would be useful information for the county to have if that's a possibility or on the table or not.
Okay. I know that Mr. Chrisman has entertained the idea of selling the property in the past, and I honestly believe that a lot of where that will go is dependent on, can we actually get something signed and in writing that he's comfortable with. I think that if, and Mr. Chrisman, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a fight that Mr. Chrisman absolutely does not want to have. He grew up in Casper. He values the natural resources and the ability that we have to go to the river, go to the mountain. The one time I was up there, Mr. Chrisman knew every single hiker on the trail. If he can't get along with his neighbors, I don't think that Mr. Chrisman is interested in holding on to that property, and a sale is certainly going to be something that's considered.
Mr. Ford, thanks. You know, there obviously is here a balance, and an important balance, between private property rights and what rights or what needs the public has in the Bridle Trail. I think everybody recognizes, and your client as well, that this is a really key resource for our county. One thing you mentioned, I guess, as a revocable license raises questions in my mind. I think they can take many different forms, but revocable typically indicates in the in the grantor's right. And I don't know if you can provide any more, I guess, parameters for us today, or if you'd like to not and at a later time talk about that. But I think that one of the concerns here would be that it be taken away from the county or the public at some point down the road, whether that's 6 months or 2 years or whatever. And I think something of more of a permanent nature, I think is at least more interesting to some people.
And that's certainly very understandable. I think that generally speaking, the revocable part is something that we'll be working out with Mr. Nelson. Initially, in my mind, that means that the county has, I'm sorry, I have a new phone and I do not know how to shut that thing off. But that the county has a license for the public to use the property. It would be Mr. Chrisman's expectation that his property gets used like that property of Rotary Park. That there's hours that you stay on the trail, that you don't have campfires, that you don't litter there. So if any individual has multiple infractions for those, then Mr. Chrisman has the ability to revoke that license for that individual. Not just a blanket, county, we're done, I'm out of here, we're locking the gate, but just to keep the people who abuse the privileges and abuse the rights from taking advantage and overstepping their bounds.
Jim.
Thank you for coming. I agree with Peter as far as trying to work this out, both on private property issues and also maintain and keep this trail system within the county parks for the remainder of however long Natrona County is. We've got a lot of people that want to use it, and we need to be a good neighbor. Natrona County does. So I do agree with Peter as far as the concern with the revocable license or permit or whatever you're talking about. Has any thought been given to maybe a 99-year lease or whatever, and then at that point to the park system? And then the parks can also, as a deputy, they can trespass people from all county parks or one county park or however it works. So has any thought been given to that?
We hadn't discussed a lease with Mr. Nelson, but instead, in the place of a revocable license, that's absolutely something that we can discuss.
And with the CAD system, how it's set up nowadays, that person can be tracked from park to park if they're ever
Absolutely.
dealt with law enforcement. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Okay, so in the course of this, so this is going really, really fast, but to slow it down a little bit. So Mr. Chrisman's willing to work with the county to do an easement. I've heard him also say that he'd like some much clearer trail designation through the entire area, and I think everyone in this room would agree that it's not just Howard's property, but it's the whole trail system needs a better map. I understand where Howard's coming from about, 99% of the people are great. It's the 1%. I don't know if anybody would be willing in the users to actually work with either Rotary or create their own kind of friends of the Bridle Trail and help police it, clean it, things like that. But I think this is an opportunity if we get momentum behind this, it won't be just this little piece. I think we could make this thing a much better, friendlier use, one that, I understand, there's dogs running. If I had a big dog and I was up there, I probably wouldn't have them on a leash, but the rules are the rules, bikes and a few of those other things. But I think this is an opportunity to not just work Mr. Chrisman's trail, but maybe in the course of this, before we move forward, we get some of the users to come in and participate in some discussions to see if there are some additional things that need to be done, and if there's some questions or concerns Mr. Chrisman has that maybe require some money. I think the county is more than prepared. If there's fencing or signage, those things, we'll be prepared to move that along, because I think this is an opportunity for a win-win for everyone, and I think we're very much looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Rob.
I'm glad you're here, but I've witnessed us working on this thing for over a decade, and I'm okay with working on it, but not for very long. We need to have something done.
Okay. Dave.
I think that goes for everybody that's involved. I know Howard's ready to have it over with. I know the user groups are ready to have the answer solved. I do appreciate coming forward and working with this and actually presenting something to us that seems to be amenable to everybody, to leave that portion open to most people, where they can still go up. Because a lot of the concerns we've heard have been, people, that's an easier trail to go up. And we understand that completely. The fact that Howard is willing to work with that and work with the groups and work with the people there so that they can stay open with, but it is private property all the way around, and that needs to be preserved as well. We need to make sure that private property rights are maintained in every form and fashion. And if there are problem children, then they need to be dealt with appropriately. You know, and I don't think anybody has ever disagreed with that in any of our park system. That's something that has to be taken care of. If we have somebody that goes out in any of our parks, we need to make sure that we have those locations and those people taken care of so that they don't continue to create problems. So I appreciate you, everybody coming forward today. And, you know, the last meeting that we had, everybody was very cordial and respectful of each other, and I appreciate that. You know, and I think that's the way to move forward instead of everybody getting their hackles up and going the wrong direction.
All right, any other questions, comments for Mr. Ford? All right, thank you.
Those comments are well taken.
All
I
right.
know that there's a lot of motivation to get
Okay.
this done on this side of the table too, so.
All right, well,
we'll
thank
be
you.
moving fast. Thank you.
And Howard, thank you. Thank you, Howard. Anybody would care to comment? Mr. Tyler? I don't think you need to give your name and address for the record. We're not on record, so there's a little more of free flow.
So I can just be really casual up here and kind of lean on it.
Yeah.
Chairman Petroleum, members of the commission. I appreciate that Howard has come to the table to say that he'd like to work something out with the user groups in the county. I think that's really great news. I'm a little bit concerned about the concept of a license because it implies that there is no other rights, and if the license is revoked, whatever other rights existed may disappear. So I would like to suggest that the county and Mr. Hirschman enter into a use agreement that lays out the parameters of each party's responsibilities. Because clearly the county and the user should have a responsibility to Mr. Kirschman, as well as he to us in allowing the use of the trail. And those agreements could relate to fencing, they could relate to signage, they could relate to policing litter and enforcing the rules and regulations. You know, right now, I think it's been difficult for the county to exercise certain authority over there because you don't have anything in place. So, again, I suggest rather than a license arrangement, deal in terms of a use agreement that says what each party is going to do and have, you know, some sort of protections when that's not met. But I still feel like private property rights are awfully important, but so are public property rights. And there are vested public property rights here. I don't want you to forget that. They have to be acknowledged and recognized. Just because they're not recorded in the courthouse records does not mean they're not a valid right. I've tried to provide that information before, but they are valid rights that exist through implication and consent, and even a written easement document, albeit one that wasn't recordable, nonetheless memorializes the easement. And if you're familiar at all with title transactions, with property transactions, when you go buy a piece of property, you almost always get a title policy because most of us aren't going to go down and want to check the courthouse records to see what's actually recorded so that we can buy the property knowing that we're a bona fide purchaser, free of any unknown obligations to that property. But if you read the title policies that are issued, they will always disclaim easements that are not recorded, defects or conditions of the property that are discoverable when you inspect the property. So you as a buyer still have an obligation to take notice of what's on the ground on the property you're looking to buy. The title company is not going to ensure that. You can try to get an ALTA survey, And that survey will show those defects, encumbrances, encroachments, and implied easements. And an Alta survey would have shown this trail system on Mr. Kirschman's property when he first bought it, if he'd acquired that. But he's also, just as a matter of law, obligated to take notice of what's there. And those are public property rights that are there. It's my opinion, demonstrated by all the things we've talked about before. But anyway, again, I'm glad to hear that maybe we're going to get past all that and talk about how we can cooperate and work together. Again, the use agreement makes the most sense to me, protects Mr. Kirschman, protects the county, and protects the user groups. We'll all get, we're all going to have to compromise some, but it will give some guidelines that hopefully will protect Mr. Kirschman going forward as well as the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, most of you know me. I'm Kathy Toops. I have a long history up there. My grandfather bought some of the land in 1961 and had a full title search, and he spent as much for the title search as for the land, because he was a geologist, and my dad was a geologist too. But what I'm going to say is, all that sounds really good, but I bought the property. Okay, so my grandfather owned 18 acres, my father owned 20 acres, I got all 18. I bought it from my parents in 2010. My husband and I did. And before that, Bruce Lamberson had asked my father repeatedly for a right-of-way for bicycles to ride from Hogadon down to the falls. And my dad repeatedly said no. And when my husband and I bought the property, it was December of 2010. We went up there in the spring of 2011, found well-worn bike paths around gates that had been posted, no trespassing, for 50 years. And so we started working on that, and we found that the county had posted maps showing trails across our property. And so we fought that, and they did change that. I've got to say, here's a map from 2012, and there were 8 areas that were conflict between private property owners and the Bridle Trail. They took care of all of them. I was here last time, and everybody was probably surprised that I was speechless. I didn't say anything. But I made 50 copies of the map, and it's wonderful. The map is great. Going up that side on the west side of the falls was really excellent. Everything about it was first class. I was thrilled with this. And so imagine how surprised I was to come in last week and hear as if nothing had happened since 2012, and we were going back to stuff that had already been solved long ago. I've been very happy with Mr. Nelson. I have felt that he is a very honest broker, and so I have to say I've been really pleased with that. But anyway, so in my opinion, there's a great bridle trail. And I brought 50 copies because I couldn't believe how many people said we were trying to shut the bridle trail. We have never tried to shut the legal bridle trail. We just don't. There is private property rights, and there's a ton of land that's public land. If they want more, go to the public land and do more there. But for ourselves, for my husband and I, our land was appraised at $212,000 back in 2010. We paid my parents for it. Last summer, we paid to have hauled off about 80 standing dead trees to cut them down and haul them off. Probably another 20 that were on the ground. Okay, now you guys, that cost a lot of money. We paid for the road getting fixed after those guys had hauled it all out. We pay for the property tax. We pay for the insurance. no way do I believe that they have a right to just trespass against our land. And I don't care if they've done it for 50 years or not. It's not right. So anyway, they haven't done it for 50 years, but I have maps, if anybody'd like a new map. I think these are excellent. This is right off
take
your
one.
website. Yeah. This is right off the website.
Here.
One side has the Bridle Trail. This is right off the website. Looks excellent. I've got enough for everybody here. These are the problems, the 8 problems in 2012 that have all been resolved. And I'm very impressed that you guys have resolved it on such a tough issue. But anyway, anybody have any more questions? I've got the title, by the way, from 1966, and it goes all the way back to information from 1922. So it was a very expensive and well-done title search back in 1966. So if anybody has any other questions, my land, my husband's my land, is bordered by the Bridle Trail up here at the top. We have about 700 feet of the Bridle Trail that define an edge of our property. We never have argued about the right of people to walk on that. So, any other questions?
Thank you. So you're up in here? You're on top? You're
Yes,
right up on
yes.
this ridge?
Right there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I got a question for you. When you bought that property, you said it was 2010?
2010, December.
And you said it went back, the title search went back
Actually,
to the beginning.
okay, so my parents and my grandparents were incredible record keepers. I'm pretty good too. And so in my dad's safe deposit box, he's still alive, but I found the title search. It has all the legal easements in, all the legal easements out. It has everything about Littlefields right-of-way. And so, yeah, I would be happy to let anybody look at it.
Sometime I think maybe the county attorney
He can have a
Would-
copy.
like to look at that. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Bruce.
Hey, thanks. I hear my name and it wakes me right up. So with all due respect to Kathy, with Skip Curry was there, I have no recollection of speaking to Skip Curry once about getting through the property, let alone numerous times. I don't know what you're talking about, but that's fine. And Skip was a good guy, and I enjoyed visiting with him, but never about this issue, because it was a non-issue for me. But anyway, be that as it may, it's irrelevant, sort of, other than she said my name. But thanks for being here. I think there's some positive things going on. I just want to really emphasize.
Oh, would you see if the button on the mic, or do we just lose the battery again?
Take one of these up here, quick.
Or you can,
I can shout.
these don't reach.
I thought we had there.
See, I know to bring battery.
We got another one.
Battery are good on it. There we go.
Green light.
This doesn't move.
I knew.
Okay.
We had one somewhere.
Now,
He's our
Now you'll have-
IT guy.
you'll have proof of what I say. No, you know, one of my favorite things to do in a lot of situations is to step back and look at what's going on. And in this particular situation, I think positive things can happen with Mr. Chrisman. We're all kind of over it. We want to get something done.
But that's a symptom of a much, much bigger problem. And I just don't want to lose sight of that, what you've already mentioned about Bridle Trail and signs and maps and education. This has gone on and on the entire mountain. Howard Chrisman's issue can happen 100 more times. If we don't get some leadership, some experience, and really a commitment to that mountain. And I know at the lake, or I feel that if the lake was operated the way that mountain's operated, the Bureau Rec could throw us all out. I mean, we have a landlord, we're accountable. On the mountain, it's been awfully weak, and there's a lack of leadership, and honestly, we're in the hospitality business up there. Outdoor recreation, hospitality, especially with the emphasis on outdoor recreation and all that's going on. And, you know, I don't know if the commissioners really want to take that on to the degree and the commitment needed, but we're losing it up there. We've lost water systems, picnic shelters, trail lodges, and all that was from it was deferred maintenance in every case. So again, let's be sure, I would just urge you to make the investment in talent and money, budget-wise, to get that mountain moving, because we're talking about outdoor recreation, $14 million of state money, and we have no projects we can even, you know, with any pride point to and get going. And this piecemeal addressing issues, whether it's Mr. Chrisman, whether it's the Rotary Club, whether it's the trail and all that, we're just missing it. And we don't have academic or professional experience in hospitality, in outdoor recreation, in parks management. And I think the commission really needs to think hard about a statutory board and taking some weight off of you, you've got a lot to do, and you can't be expert at everything. I equate it to the airport board. If we can get a board in place of talented individuals, bring in the right staff, and be held accountable, and have the authority and advocate for a budget. I mean, this is going to go on and on. I've watched it since Bob Adams' day and, you know, Jim Sullivan, Kelly Estes, Sam Weaver, when there was a statutory board. I mean, that made a lot of sense, and they got stuff done, and they had the authority to do it. So down the road, you know, the time's a wasting on this stuff, and we're getting way behind. The biggest thing right now is water. We have fire danger and no water system. I mean, there's remedies to all this, but it shouldn't be me talking to you or you or you, or there needs to be some organizational alignment to make good things happen up there. And I think the last few decades have shown that we're kind of not on track here. So I think this is just a symptom of a bigger thing I'd love to see. And I'm just going to keep reminding you of that when the mic works and you're kind enough to listen. But anyway, that's what I got, but it's a positive.
We are, well, I speak for myself, share the same concerns that and many have heard me say that mountain is going to get more and more pressure. And if we don't start putting in place rules, regulations that protect those private property rights, we're going to have a free-for-all up there. We're going to have people come in and just simply start blocking everything off. And we have to get ahead of this before it reaches a point where there is only the main roads up there that we can go on. So,
right. No, I appreciate that. In my business, there's a thing we talk about, best practices. Mm-hmm. I don't think we even have the ability to know what best practices are because we haven't had the people in place who know that. Yeah. And that's...
Okay. All right, thank you.
We'll get there, day at a time, but time's a wasting. Thank you.
You bet. Yes?
One comment?
Yes. Well, so if this is going to get personal back and forth, okay.
It pertains to this.
Okay, that's fine.
The first map that was produced that went across our land, it was by Neil Benton on his GPS. And Nancy Moody told me that. And even on the little legend of the map, it says Bike Trail in Benton. So that's one thing. Here's something else on the Bridle Trail, or the Friends of the Bridle Trail. They have been extremely aggressive. And here's one where they had a whole bunch of likes, and they're starting something called Share the Land. Share the Land. You guys, there's public land. People get to use public land for public. But private is private. I mean, why would I pay for everything that I've paid for if it's not private?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thank you.
sorry.
No problem. Anyone else? Good afternoon, Howard.
Greetings. Appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us and bellyache a little bit. And all these years, I hear a lot of really good things, good responses. Eric's been outstanding to work with, as you guys have. You've thrown up questions that I haven't thought of in the past. As much as I don't agree with some people, you know, they make me think also of what I need to do as a good steward of the land. And I appreciate all of that. What I'm always interested in is we talk about the public, and they deserve this, and the public deserves this. If the public deserves all of that across private property, then why isn't the public coming to us basically and saying, you know, Howard, I can help you with this road. I can help you with the trail, the county commissioners with the trail. The public, I think, needs to be involved with all of our trails. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, my land. You know, I got a small piece of property. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. If we don't get this addressed, and maybe mine is a precedent setting, Kathy Toops is a precedenting situation on the land, but it's going to be all over the mountain. And this private property situation, I think has to be addressed not only in Wyoming or Casper or Natrona County. It's something that's going to be a problem all over. I don't want to see us turn Wyoming into a California. And I owned a place in California, several big acres, and you couldn't deal with it anymore. You had squatters, you had campfires all over the place, you had all these problems. Last time I was up here, somebody said I was embellishing or I was exaggerating. I can tell you what, a lot of people have been to my property. I am not exaggerating. Number of people that are coming up there. And in the last few years, it's significantly more. We haven't addressed the road that goes up to Garden Creek Falls yet. People every weekend park all the way down. And those landowners down there, they can't even, their driveway's blocked. So that, you know, there's lots of things. After hours, that's the major problem. If somebody would have come to me 12 years ago and said, Howard, let's sit down and really talk about this, we wouldn't be here today. But it's taken all this time, and it has taken, you know, I'm paying the taxes like Kathy is talking about. I'm paying for the abatement. I paid over $2,000 just to have tree removal for fire protection. I don't see anybody helping me with that, you know, but yet they want to cross my property with absolutely no responsibility. If the times were changed, or if we're not hypocritical, if they come down into your property in town, would you allow that to happen? I'm allowing, 12 years ago, I probably should have shut the road off. Nobody would have said anything. I've created my own problem, probably. But I tried to be as good a person as I could to my community, which I love. I'll always be a Casperite. I never, when I left here and got transferred all over the nation, I said, I am going to make sure I always come back to Wyoming and I always come back to Casper, my home. And I'm going to make it a better place. And I bought different sections of land, not because you didn't see me subdividing it. I could have. I bought it so that nobody would subdivide, nobody would build on those pieces of property. So we would have a good Casper Mountain. I just want you guys to understand, put yourself in my shoes and understand exactly what I'm going through. And it's not a arrogance thing. You know, I look at this big picture, and, you know, Bruce mentioned I've been in business all my life. We're talking about best practices and stuff. You have to have a quorum of people to have best practices, and they make decisions based on good, solid facts. We have, you know, we churn people all the time, so we don't have good, solid facts because nobody has a clue what's going on half the time. Some people have never been up there. Some people have been up to my place several times. Under these circumstances and what we're talking about, I should be able to cross where the Oregon Trail is, the Bozeman Trail, the Mormon Trail, and be able to cut fences and walk right through that kind of property with no hesitation. Because a lot of it's BLM land, right? We got to address this, and I'm more than willing to be flexible. More than willing to be flexible. Most of those people coming up there are good friends of mine still to this day. Been going up there for 36 years. And when I brought that property, I did my due diligence. I made sure that I had it surveyed. I made sure that I had Rocky Mountain Title do the title search, all of that sort of thing. And then you can imagine how frustrated I was when people started saying that I'm closing the trail. I'm not closing the trail at all. I'm trying to guide people. I want the Parks Department to put up the signs like we're planning on doing and make sure people are on the property properly. That's all I'm asking. I ask you guys to make the right decisions on the behalf of not myself, but the entire community, and I will abide by that.
Thank you. Like I say, I think from this point moving forward, Eric and Mr. Ford, I think they've got a pretty good, they're lawyers. We'll just leave it at that. They can wordsmith, but in the end, before we get done, I'd like to have it come back, and we'll make the document available to everyone. If there's some things in there that they've missed that maybe the user groups think that we could improve on that may be germane to it, we'll open it back up a little bit. But I thank everyone for your participation in this. It is really is a gem for Natrona County to have something like this. And I think Mr. Chrisman recognizes that. It's just how do we get to the end point and ensure that this not only resolves this issue, but actually improves what's up there. So with that, I thank everyone. We are going to go back downstairs and do a little bit more budget before our regular meeting at 5:30. So thank you. If you want to stick around, I mean, we're a joyful bunch, especially when we've been at it since 8 o'clock this morning. So thank you all.